welcome to the Reject Pile with me, Luke Edwards. Before introducing this week's guest, I just want to take a moment to tell you about our previous episode, which featured feedback and advice on submitting to BBC Radio Scotland's Breaking the News. My guests were Ellie Hayward and Dan Swerit, who ran a training course that aims to help you gain your first writing credit on the show. I'm really pleased with the response that the episode has received. It's been shared on social media by the producers of Breaking the News, who said, really enjoyed listening to this as an insider. Some great advice and support for those looking to up their hit rate or start writing for #BTN. That was Lauren McKay on X, and Chris Quillietti on Threads declared, there is some excellent advice for Breaking the News writers here. Happily, the episode has also proven its worth for one listener, Lucienne Cummings, who had a few gags featured on the first episode of the new series of Breaking the News, and they had this to say on Blue Sky in a post addressing Dan Swerit. Your advice, so that's Dan's advice, on the Reject Pile was so helpful. I've had jokes on the show before, but this gave me a shot in the arm. I wrote more, tightened up more, and a couple of my jokes made it into this week's episode. As well as all of this, I was also pleased to receive some correspondence from other listeners. Sylvia in Bournemouth got in touch. She writes, I wanted to say how much I enjoyed listening to episode 2 of the podcast. I loved it. And Glenn in Sutton writes, congratulations on the second pod. Very interesting. Dan was talking about his best jokes being the ones that are rewritten by Stu and Steve. And I saw the same thing on a programme about the writing of Blackadder recently. Ben Elton and Richard Curtis used to rewrite edited versions of their scripts back and forth until they were both happy. And then Atkinson, Fry and co used to do another rewrite as they were doing rehearsals. Persistence is fertile. Great episode. If you're not aware, persistence is fertile is one of Dan's catchphrases, which he brought out in the episode last time. Glenn did also say that he would have liked a little plug at the beginning of the episode, just pointing out what Breaking the News is and how one could access it. So let me address that. Breaking the News is a topical panel show on BBC Radio Scotland, but they do occasionally do a TV episode. It's hosted by Des Clark and features a panel of comedians. Crucially, they invite new writers to respond to a brief that they send out, so it's a valuable opportunity for writers to gain their first writing credits and get professional experience of writing for a BBC radio show. You can find the Breaking the News radio show on BBC Sounds, and the TV episodes are on iPlayer. It's been very nice to hear from listeners on how the podcast is being received out in the wild, both from writers, but also people who aren't necessarily writers, but they're comedy and creative nerds who are just interested in how this stuff works. So please do recommend it to anyone in your life that you think might enjoy it, and do send in your correspondence and any feedback. You can email rejectpilepod@gmail.com or find us on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, Blue Sky and X at rejectpilepod. Of course, we're also keen to receive your own rejected material or stories of rejection in the arts for featuring on future episodes. Now, to this episode, where we will be featuring material sent in by comedy writer Mike Grace. If you've not heard the Reject Pile before, the format is that you will first hear the finished sketch performed by the Reject Pile cast. We will then jump into a conversation with Mike and resident Reject Pile script editor Phil Stewart to discuss the first draft that Mike sent to us and the editing process that followed. So Mike and Phil won't have heard the finished recording at that point. During our conversation, they will then hear the recorded sketch for the first time and will get their reflections and thoughts on next steps after that. So here's what Mike had to say by way of an introduction. Picture this. A neurodivergent kid who couldn't quite nail small talk, but had an imagination that ran wild. That was Mike. Writing became his way of making sense of the world, or at least the one with clearer rules and way better jokes. Fast forward through careers in journalism, research, and social sciences, and he's still doing the same thing, building strange but honest worlds that hold up a funhouse mirror to our own. Whether he's roasting consumer culture, multicultural awkwardness, or our toxic relationship with food and work, his goal is simple. Make you laugh first, then make you go, wait, why am I laughing? Mike is currently honing his craft with Breaking the News, looking after his family, and trying to remember where he put his notes. Mike sent us in a comedy sketch that was an unsuccessful submission of his to BBC Radio 4's sketch comedy show DMs Are Open. DMs Are Open is another open door show, which means it invites material submitted by new and aspiring writers. So it's a really great opportunity for people like me and the people that we feature on the show. You can find DMs Are Open on BBC Sounds. Helping me perform the sketch were Rob Stevenson, Alexis Coward, Jonathan Amphlett, Rachel Cook, and Ronan Hatfull. You can find more information about them and the work that they're doing in the show notes. So, without further ado, let's hear Mike's submission to the Reject Pile. This is Dinosaur's Den.
Welcome. News bad. Sky good. Now, Dinosaur's Den. Many cavemen come, few leave. Meet Grot, Drog, Trod, and Stupid. Urk.
Me dog. Me am asking for cave to be fire in.
Me, I'm out.
No, here dog. That's good idea.
Me, I'm still out.
Trog is Tog brother.
Speak, Tog.
Me, I'm looking at many fire cave all around land.
Can Drog live in Fire Cave?
Me not sure.
For that reason, me am out.
Fire cave. Let fire last long time.
Me think Tog have good idea. Work, try, me I'm in.
Tog steal cave idea.
Urk. Stupid. Now is Ort.
Me happy cave. Me want Grot to share cave.
Me, I'm out.
Me am out.
Me I'm in.
Me, I'm out.
Ort gets Trod as wife. Ort sad. Now is Rook.
Me am looking for tribe.
Me, I'm out.
Me, I'm out.
Urk. Tribe stupid. But Drog listen.
Rock story sad. Me hear more.
Me big inventor. Me chop tree. Make big circle. Circle round. Circle move things.
Can move rocks.
Can move rocks.
Can move caves.
Not move caves.
Me I'm out.
Can move dinosaurs.
Rock not try. Rock try.
Rock me. Rock move dinosaur. Me am in.
Me, I'm in.
Urk is dinosaur food. Rook is now rot. All dinosaurs happy. Fire fades. When fire lights, dinosaurs back.
Mike and Phil join me now. Hello, guys.
Hi.
Hey, hiya. How you doing?
Mike, welcome to the Reject Pile. And thanks for
Thank you
sending
very much.
Dinosaur's Den. I wondered if you'd like to start by telling us the inspiration behind the sketch.
Well, the inspiration was originally there was a prompt called Brand New. This is about a year ago. And I was trying to think of, well, the best way of doing this script is doing something which will be brand new to start with, but is actually something that came way back in the past. So my original idea was, well, how about fire? The first man to discover fire. And I went, oh, that's Prometheus. Okay. The first man to discover a wheel. Okay, that's a good sketch. Now, how would they sell the idea of a wheel? Well, at that point, I started ticking on to Reggie Sauce,
Right,
which
yeah.
brought in Dragon's Den. And then I thought, well, they're not going to be dragons, they're going to be dinosaurs. And then taking that idea and just mucking about with it and going, right, so they're going to be on a TV thing. It's going to be cavemen, sort of a Flintstones thing. And from then it just started writing itself, as the saying goes.
Yeah, of course. That's really interesting. That was one of the things that I picked up on, I guess, in my first read. I don't know if you had this as well, Phil, was are these dinosaurs or are these cavemen? And maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll get onto that.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair to Mike here, Dragon's Den as a TV show makes no sense. Why are they dragons? Why is it den? I don't understand the link. Maybe I'm obviously thick, but I cannot understand where the link between that and being able to fund a business proposal. Dragons don't do that.
Dragons have treasure.
Yes,
I think
but
that might be
that's
it.
it. That's the only connection. Well, if that is the link, so they're basically like human Smaug, which
Yeah.
famously doesn't share treasure. And famously, you don't go and say, "Hey, could I have some treasure, please?" But anyway, so what you're saying here in this is that before dragons, there were dinosaurs who also had treasure that would then try to be shared. Is that? I'm just trying to make sure. I know it sounds like I'm being
That's,
really picky, but the concept behind the comedy, I always think, is important.
yeah, that's basically it. It's basically you've got to bring ideas in front of these elders who have the ability to make your dreams come true.
Yeah,
Yeah,
using
And
the format of Dragon's Den as the
yeah,
parody.
that's
yeah.
what it meant.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is that confusion is the killer of comedy. I can't remember who told me that.
James Carey, probably.
James Carey definitely says that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there we go. That's probably where I got that from. But it is that idea of, okay, hang on a minute. We've got several relatively confusing ideas, and one of them isn't your fault. One of them is Dragon's Den makes no sense, really. It's not them. It's not shown in any way. It's not like they're branded up as dragons, and it's a bit too.
That would be a much better show.
I would think it'd be great if they were CGI dragons.
But I do think it's relatable. I think people, they're familiar with the TV.
They are
format.
now, but I'm just saying then, but it's a bit, so then to use that abstract term to then stretch it even more to make it dinosaurs. I understand the using the TV format, but what I'm saying is that kind of idea of stretching an analogy as your basic concept, and I'm like, what are you doing with the dinosaurs that makes them dinosaurs rather than dragons?
I think I agree, Mike. It'd be interesting to know what you think. Like, the dinosaur element sort of seems surplus to requirement. We get the reference to Dragon's Den, and I think where it ends up, they're cavemen, right? I haven't fundamentally.
No, they are actually cavemen.
Yeah,
the dinosaurs was basically saying, what would you call an elder of a tribe? And you'd say they're as powerful as dinosaurs.
Well, and also, we do refer to old people as dinosaurs sometimes, maybe in quite an uncomplimentary sense.
When I was reading the script, I was thinking, okay, I absolutely can see Dragon's Den with cavemen, and there's various things that appear, the ideas stolen from another tribe, and the support is given, and some people support it because they do and stuff, and I'm like, okay, but what I can't quite grasp is why this format. What is it that you're trying to say in general? What's and similarly, when we get to the punchline, it just sort of stops. And so this sounds like a big criticism, but it's more, why this sketch? Why is it? Yes, you've taken an idea and you put it in the past, but what does that do? What does that say? What is it you're trying to comment on in contemporary society that makes it important for you to use that and then put it in the past, if you see what I mean? What is it about the past that would highlight something about the present?
Some new information.
Yeah, do you see what I mean? And I know it sounds
what
a bit
it was based on was, with the prompts of Brand New, I wanted to show something. I wanted to show that everything's just on a continuum between what is old and what is new, and taking something that's fairly new and making it old again would sort of show how nothing's really changed. So it's sort of like reliving history.
I guess what you're saying is, as an idea, perhaps if this was a running sketch with regular characters in different periods of time, and I'm looking at Blackadder for an example of how you can do this, and you could have, but in that case, you need to have really clear characters that demonstrate they're this type, they're the other one's this type of person, the sort of archetypes of character. And then you go, okay, this is them in the cavemen times, and this is them in medieval times. And then that would demonstrate this idea of humanity always has the same types of people throughout time.
Should we get onto that a little bit? Because that's something that I think in the first draft, Phil, you and I possibly had a similar note, which is, I think, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but in that original draft, the connection between the elders in the sketch and the dragons that we know now and was not there, or maybe it was there a little bit. And I think maybe we both had the same note. Is it supposed to be there? And if so, let's amplify it. Or if not. And so, yeah, do you want to talk to us about that, Mike?
I think, number one, by that point, I'd only ever seen the Reggie Sauce episode and the parody that Harry Enfield did on it.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the stuff came from. The fact that Deborah M basically disagrees with everything and has this terrible stare. One of the guys only works with people who he likes. One of the guys just says no all the time. And just taking those basic ideas and just making the jokes come from the cavemen themselves rather than the dinosaurs.
Right.
And then with the notes, I thought, okay, right. Now there's enough of the dragons I can put in to actually make it so that they become characters in their own right.
I think what you just said actually highlights something that, again, I'm a very big advocate of, and that's research. So if you're going to parody something, you really need to know that thing. And you saying I've only watched one clip of a Reggae Sauce plus a parody of it, I would strongly recommend watching lots of episodes. Really know your material so that you have a view and you are doing your own interpretation of those characters and your own comedy take on Deborah Meaden or whoever it is. I mean, that's the other thing as well. If you're referring to a Harry Enfield sketch as your format and your take on that's quite a few years old. Dragon's Den is still on and the lineup is completely different.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So if you want to parody something, first really know your subject, but also see how it currently looks and go, oh, hang on a minute, we've got different people. I should be exaggerating and parodying those if I am using something as part of my sketch. The alternative is, no, I'm not going to do Dragons Den. I'm just using the idea of it being presented to elders, and then you strip out. This is what Luke was saying. Either you do it and you go full in, but are you really going to rip into Dragon's Den and show it up for the ridiculousness of it is? In which case, then all of the characters need to be clear caricatures, including the presenter, whose name escapes me.
Evan Davis.
Evan Davis, thank you very much. So you should do them all and make them all ridiculous. And that gives the audience a good in because they will recognize who these people are, assuming they've seen the show. That's the other thing I always find about parodies is that you immediately whittle down your audience to people who've seen that thing. And that's if you're doing a sketch show where you do various parodies, I think you'd probably get away with it. But I know this was submitted to DMs are open. And as I understand it, they don't generally do parodies, as far as I recall.
No, I've never seen.
No.
I've seen a couple of them, and they like cozy shows that poke the limits. I think is the best way I can put it.
Yeah, and again, that brings me back to research. If you're going to submit to a show, you need to watch and listen to the show and get to know the sorts of things that get through the door. I remember the note they did one was big characters and strong, so that means really getting to understand how to write characters and what beyond a surface level of what they do, understanding the characters' objectives. And then what gets in the way of that. And that brings me to my other big note about this sketch. A comedy sketch, I should say a traditional comedy sketch, normally has one character wanting something and there is somebody or something that gets in the way of it, and they try repeatedly a variety or on a theme to try to get what they want, and then something else. They will either something will happen or they will think of some other way that will turn everything around and resolve the situation. But normally you focus on a protagonist, and this sketch there seems to be it's a bit unfocused. If yes, we've got the dragons in it, but maybe it would have been better to have the protagonist being someone going to the dragons and trying various things with the same person, with and trying a variety of techniques in order to win. And at the end of the sketch, they either win or they lose through their actions. Because that way we've got a clear punchline.
This was the thing, when I was writing it, I remember being hit by two very separate ideas which didn't seem to work together. It's as if it's a story rather than a sketch, and I think that's the thing. It would have been better as part of an extra thing, but it's actually really just difficult to see it at the time. Getting some step back from it,
Yeah,
it's
some
easier
distance.
now. But yeah, at the time, it's sort of like I've just got to get this to work.
Yeah.
That, I mean, it is very difficult to get that distance and an objectivity of your own work.
Especially, sorry, can I jump in? The nature of so what I'm getting from this, Mike, is that this was specifically written for that brief. It's not something you
Yes.
had lying around and you're like, okay, I'm going to put that in on that week. You're already under the time pressure to come up with a brand new idea for the subject, brand new. Iterate on it probably in that week and then send it in. You don't have a lot of time for getting space and distance like what we've had now.
Was cooking for the family and doing everything else.
Yeah, exactly. Living.
I would recommend when writing a sketch, though, it's so important to have something to say. Rather than just, oh, I've got a funny idea, really think about why is that funny? What is it that it targets?
It's like, what's it about and what's it really about?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What is it you're trying to say? What is the? But I'm sure I've talked about this before, but comedy has always got a target, and it is normally ridiculing that target in some way and highlighting how stupid it is. Even puns are ridiculing the English language, and I'm not sure in your sketch what the target is. If it was a full-on parody of Dragon's Den, then that's obviously your target. But it doesn't really do that because, as we've said, we've not got clear characters who are in the show. We've not exaggerated that. So it's not that. So where is the root of it?
I've done a lot of world building on this, and there is a lot of different little targets rather than one big one.
I did want you to say a bit more about that, Mike, because we had, funnily enough, in the time leading up to the recording, we actually had time for more than one iteration on this.
Yeah,
So there were a couple of little tiny iterations, and in some of our interactions, you referenced meta jokes. So yeah, do you want to just kind of elaborate on some of those now?
Well, for a start, there's a whole thing with the names of the tribe all being sort of guttural grunts with very, very limited letters. So all the characters are named with the letters O, G, R, and D because that's all the letters they have that they can actually write with. There is a joke about heterosexual and homosexual relationships. There's about.
I'm trying to think if that's made it to the last draft. That might not. That possibly doesn't come across in the recording.
That's actually in there.
So when you hear the final sketch, that maybe that
one.
one.
Okay, fair enough.
We'll reflect on that in a mo when you've.
Yeah.
Go on.
I've just got a note about this, and I hadn't heard obviously the new version, but this idea that the cavemen have got only a limited alphabet and thus can only have names that are made up of those letters. That's a brilliant idea. Is that made clear to the audience? Because if you said to the audience, we've only got four letters, then the names of the characters will be hilarious because it's quite clear you're stretching to try and figure out how I can make a name out of these things. And you've got an extra joke. You could have them really kind of bend the rules a little bit or whatever because they're so desperate to try and make a name out of these four letters. Again, so I would say that was a wasted opportunity. It's a great idea. It's a great comedy concept. But if the audience don't know about it, why bother putting it in? Because ultimately, a sketch needs to be something that actors can act, that the audience will listen to and understand and find funny. Putting jokes in the script for is only going to, I mean, yes, you can explain it to us, and when we're producing it, we'll go, well, that's funny, but the audience aren't going to hear it. So I would just honestly either do something with it or cut it out.
Make it explicit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got a note. I'm sort of increasingly having a note as the producer of this show, right? Because then I get my cast together and direct it and record the sketch. And that was one of the first, I guess for me, Mike, speaking like candidly, that was a bit of an obstacle when I first got it because the names are so similar. You're like, okay, what actually is going on here? And again, if I can like be critical again, I think it's possible there are some typos as well. Let me know if it's wrong, but it might. I'm reading it for the first time, thinking, okay, I've got to cast this. I've got to record it. Is that a typo? Is that the same? Is that character or not? And that was possible. That was some of our clarification going back via email as well. It's all right. So is this? is this character supposed to have this accent, and that sort of thing. So I think that's maybe just Phil talks a lot about the craft and the writing and the characterization and so on. But there's another element to factor in, isn't there? That this is being, this is needs to be made. There's a team that need to sort of turn this into a performance. So maybe some of those things were slight obstacles to me that I had to overcome through dialogue with you, which the DMs are open team, they don't have the luxury of time to do that. So I suppose in a way, I wonder if those are things that make this an easier candidate for them to discard straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing was, I'm still trying to find out a way of actually getting recording notes in to say, right, I have made this choice for this reason, which becomes apparent later, but you won't notice it on the first time.
And that really helped. So because we had that luxury of being able to clarify things, what I was then able to put together in the script to the cast was those notes. We've sort of touched on this, but we can do more on it. We really did go down the decision of, okay, these are parodying the dragons. So I was able to say, okay, you are Duncan Bannatyne. You are someone else. I didn't have that in the first draft. It was the process of iterating on it that got us there. But you're right, Mike, and maybe Phil, especially with the experience you've got working on like actual shows. How does a writer go about communicating some of that subtext necessarily, to a production team or
right?
Any thoughts on that?
So this is actually part of my job. I'm amongst the things that I do all the scripts work. I make I reformat the scripts, and I will do script amendments and things like that, so that while we're producing a TV show, there's very likely to be changes. For various practical reasons. When I was working on Mr. Big Stuff, one of the actors was just so bloody brilliant at his role, the writer went, I'm going to just write him some more stuff to do. Because he was so good. So we had extra pages for that character coming in. So those sorts of things happen throughout the making of a TV show. It's not a locked script from beginning to end.
I suppose in a conventional show, you've got the writer.
Absolutely. In TV, you've got the writer.
These open door shows do not afford us such luxury.
No.
Well, yeah. But what you were saying about how they communicate, basically they will talk to the producer and they will explain this stuff. And if it's not clear on the page, someone like me in production will need to make it clear on the page. One of the things I do when I'm reading it is I'm looking at it going, I'm not sure what's going on here. And if I can't understand it, then the crew aren't going to understand it. Or especially not the audience. And we need to be able to make this thing. So I will make adjustments to the script to make it clearer. I will show the producer and go, look, I've made these changes just for clarity. And clarity is always king. That's what we go for, is to try to make it as clear as possible what's going on. So you haven't got that vagueness, because when you've got grey areas of having to try and figure out what's going on, that's when people go, I don't want to work on this one. And that's possibly why, this script got turned down.
So if there's any level of ambiguity, you want to put a note in saying this is because of this, or this is deliberately ambiguous, or...
Why would you do anything deliberately ambiguous in a comedy sketch?
If the joke was about ambiguity.
I suppose there might be an exception to that. But generally speaking, the sketches need to be clear. And if it's not clear, then you shouldn't have to make a note, because the audience aren't going to read those notes.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that what is clear in the actor's dialogue and the sound effects. It shouldn't need an explanation as to what you're doing. If you need to make those notes, you need to go back and rewrite.
That's where I'm getting to with what you're saying, Phil, is it's contextual, right? Situational awareness. If you're in the blessed position where you're working on a show with a producer, with a script editor, director, you've got more license for such conversations. Open door shows, you don't have that. Cut the ambiguity, make it as crystal clear what's on the page is what needs to happen. Maybe. Mike, have you got any sort of follow-up points on that?
Some of the time, it's very difficult to get across an idea. So is there a way for writers to say, this is what I'm thinking for this? But there's very few ways of actually getting it across.
The DMs are open template is pretty prescriptive in its character name, dialogue, FX, and grams. There's no space for any parenthesis, I would say. That might be deliberate on their front.
I would say, and this is an old note, is if you've got dialogue that requires explanation as to how it should be performed, then you need to rewrite that dialogue. The only time you need anything that's parenthetical is if it's, say, sarcastic or something like that that's really not obvious. If the dialogue doesn't make it clear how an actor should perform this line, then the line is wrong. And that applies to the story and the characters. It needs to be really vivid and clear, and only in the characters, how they behave, what they're doing, and the words that they say. And then the actor will pick that up and understand simply by the situation they find themselves in, and the things that they do will then inform how they deliver the line. And you don't need it, you need to get the sketch, or the script rather, to that point. And I know you said it's really hard. Yes, I would just like to point out, nobody ever said writing was easy. It isn't. It's a skill like anything. You've got to practice it. You should be practicing every day, something I'm very bad at, if I'm honest with you. But it's a developed skill that you do over time. But even in professional television, we get scripts in, and they get notes from the commissioner, they get notes from the producer, they get notes from the exec, and they get will then have to go back and rewrite. So don't be thinking that you have to be the best, most perfect writer in the world in order to, have a career, and then you're at that level that nobody will ever touch your notes and no one will ever give you notes. No, you will always get notes. And in fact, ironically, it is easier once you've been successful, because then you will get notes and people will pick up on things. When you're starting out, you don't get the opportunity to get notes. You've got to knock it out the park. And people go, wow, you're good enough for us to be able to give you work in future when you can be a bit rubbish and we can give you some notes. It's almost the wrong way around. So, unfortunately, it's very difficult to get into the industry, the writing industry, because there's such a high bar expected for entry in terms of the quality of the scripts you're doing. But at the same time, there's podcasts like this one where we will give you notes, and we will try to. It's kind of the reason why this podcast exists, is so that you get that feedback and notes that at the early stage you just don't get.
Yeah.
And then you get that opportunity to see if you can improve or adjust your sketch to be able to sort of meet the sort of standard criteria. I mean, when I give these notes, I've always got traditional comedy sketches in mind. And I know people go, yes, people do other things. Yeah, but master the basics first. Get the traditional ones down, and then you can start once you're familiar with the general, how to do an ordinary sketch, then let's see what you can do when you really go wild.
There's this concept in martial arts of shuhari. Have you heard of shuhari? It's this 3-step process that you go through where you're learning by rote. You're just literally learning mechanically the steps, and then you've mastered the steps, and then you transcend the steps. And it's what you're saying there, Phil. You've mastered the basics. You can now play with the form and express it in your own way.
Yeah. And so what I try to do when I give notes on this is I'm giving notes that relate to traditional form, to try to get you guys to, and it's, we get lots of sketches on here, to get people to master the basics, and then they can go off and transcend and write, more advanced stuff. I would say that things like DMs, they're not looking for anything too mad. They want traditional.
Yeah.
I think for precisely the same reason, that they want to be able to see how good people can be with the traditional format, because the traditional format still exists. People still deliver comedy sketches in that format and still come up with new ideas, and it's a very...
And people laugh.
It's
a radio show. They want an audience of people laughing. And I guess,
And those sort of traditional formats are designed to work, basically. I mean, John Finnemore is the highest bar the best writer I can think of in terms of comedy sketches, right? In contemporary circles. He's so good. But he writes traditional comedy sketches. He doesn't break the form or anything that particularly.
Okay. I'm going to move us on to listening to
I want to hear it.
Sketch.
Sure.
Here it comes.
Welcome. News bad. Sky good. Now, Dinosaur's Den.
And move dinosaurs?
Rock not try. Rock try.
Rock me. Rock Move! Dinosaur!
Me am in!
Me am in.
Ugh is dinosaur food. Rook is now rot. All dinosaurs happy. Fire fades. When fire lights, dinosaurs back.
There we go. So, Mike, do you want to go first? Just what initial reflections you have off hearing that?
I'd actually set Coda up as female because, again, Coda is supposed to be between the tribes and is meant to be the sort of female announcer. But the guy who did Drog was fantastic.
That's the Duncan Bannatyne character.
Hearing other people do it, because I've put it through a text-to-speech, and I was listening to it and getting the rhyme and the rhythm and the pausing and things. But yeah, hearing other people do it, completely different experience, and got some laughs out of it. So that's not too bad.
Yeah.
I think what you've just drawn on is there. It's really enlightening to hear how other people respond to your text, because a writer might have a certain way of it being delivered, but you need to let that go, which obviously you did, and it can reveal an awful lot when you get actors to just perform it. So I would strongly recommend, and I said this on, I'm sure, a previous episode, get your mates to read it to you, get other people to read it to you, and if they're struggling with it, that I think demonstrates an issue that might need to be resolved, or if they're not, those sorts of things, it's really practically useful to hear other people and how they respond to what's been put in front of them and where the issues are, that as a writer you'll go, well, obviously it's said in this way, or of course that's not how I saw it. But they're not going to be in your head. They're only going by what's written down, which is again why clarity needs to be clear. If there's things that are essential for it to make sense, then include it. But this made sense and it was different to how you thought of, so that was fine, if you see what I mean. I would say having a female presenter on Dragon's Den demonstrates lack of research, because, as I said, it's Evan Davis. Yeah. So that, to me, doesn't make that. It made more sense if you're going down the route of parodying Dragon's Den, to do each of the people who are actually on the show, and that's obviously what you did in your version, Luke.
Yeah, and I think that must have been a miscommunication, Mike.
It's there, but I haven't wrote it there.
There we go, and
that's the thing.
Yeah,
because
so
again, the A in her name isn't available to the original tribe members, so I've not put that down. No one knew that apart from me.
The other thing is a note that I wanted to give you based on producing it was the assignment to my cast was, okay, you need to be Evan Davis, but you're also a caveman. And obviously I think Duncan Bannatyne Drog, as you mentioned, that's the one that is clearly the easier one to execute.
Is that what we're saying? Duncan Bannatyne is closer to a caveman.
That was one thing that me and Mike had a back and forth on, was at one point, and perhaps this ties back to your point earlier about homosexuality. One of the dragons was Peter Jones, and I'm thinking, what, with respect to Peter Jones, what is distinctive about Peter Jones's voice? So I thought, well, let's go for Sarah Davis. That has not come across in the performance, obviously, with a sort of northeastern cave woman. But I think as well, like perhaps an unintended side effect of that is that character being portrayed by a female actor is then the one with the "me am in" line. And we've lost that gag.
Disappears then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you've got caveman voices and they're all doing different. I mean, I swear 4 of them sounded like Yoda to me, but they're all doing so. The audience in their head are trying to distinguish each individual character, and they've all got funny voices, but they've also got funny dialogue, and that layers and layers of things that get in the way of clarity can be really difficult for the audience to understand what's going on. So I would go, you probably need to pick one or the other and go, either it's got funny dialogue, in which case then let's just have them speak in modern, so the Duncan Bannatyne is clearer, because that was fine. So they don't need to be talking a bit funny or anything. They can just be modern, or they speak in a contemporary language, but with caveman voices.
Yeah.
Putting the two on top of each other makes it a really hard listen for the audience to just follow the dialogue and what's going on. So it's just being mindful of that and going, so in the script you could make it clear and go, they speak in this accent, they speak in that accent, but they don't speak in caveman voices, even though they're cavemen. Or you put in the note, say, they speak in caveman voices, but they have quite clear dialogue that, so there isn't anything that would get in the way. That is a writer decision. You can make that one, but putting both on top of each other, or at least allowing for the possibility of both of those, which is what Luke has done, because he's gone, oh yes, we've got caveman voices and we've got caveman dialogue, and together the writer has allowed that to happen because you've not said anything against it, and therefore it's more difficult for the audience to understand. And I know this isn't something that you would necessarily be aware of until you hear it, but that is something that you can practice with your friends and go, okay, if you're going to read this, they may have questions, and those questions are things that are not in the script, going, should I put a funny voice on? And the script should give that away.
Yeah.
I wanted to build out on what Phil was saying again, just some more notes for you, Mike, just to bear in mind for future. Our actor with the voices that sound like Yoda, it's the same actor having to do multiple characters, and that does tie back, I suppose, to what we were saying earlier about, did this even need to be different characters? That's one note, but it's sort of an aside. The brief that comes out from DMs are open. We know we've got 5 cast members, so do we need to be mindful of the ceiling of characters that we might put in the piece? And that was sort of the challenge I had, and I think we covered this, Mike, was that actor is going to need to do all those different characters.
It started off as being just a sort of a 2-person back and forth, and I thought, no, I've got to do more characters. And I ended up doing too many characters.
So
it's
for DMs, that's the thing as well, and we spoke about it in the last episode that me and Phil did. DMs doesn't have to be the end of the road for this sketch, and hopefully this podcast episode is part of the process. So whilst DMs has got a ceiling of 5 actors, that doesn't necessarily have to be a constraint somewhere else. But I suppose if we reflect on why might this have been unsuccessful for DMs, that's possibly one of the contributing factors. And another thing that I wanted to mention, again from my experience, and I'd like to know what you thought listening to it as well, there are effects cues in the script that are, one character has hit another character. I certainly have had no idea of how to portray that to make it clear to the listener who has hit whom, basically. Mike, maybe you had an intention of how that might be executed, or maybe you're happy with how it was executed, but just another thing that maybe it wasn't quite possible for that to land with the listener because it was difficult to execute.
Well, that was the thing. I'd put it in there more as a nod to the actor, because if Grot is going to club up, then the character who's playing Grot may want to wind up for the clubbing.
Yeah.
So it's not, the audience don't need to know about it.
So what do you think about that?
The actors might want to.
What about that? So that is in an FX cue, Phil.
Yeah.
You've got notes on that strategy.
Yes, the FX cue should be clear, but at the same time, the FX cue description should be what the audience hear. And if it's just whack, because that's ultimately what they're going to hear, the audience aren't going to know who has whacked who.
But Mike's written it as drog clubs.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, is that you would need extra dialogue around that or something so that the audience can understand who has hit who. And even if it's as simple as going, ow, you hit me, or something like that. I know it's a bit on the nose, but something that can clarify what a sound effect has happened. Because however good a description it is, the audience aren't going to get it. But
also from the production side, the different people are involved. The person sourcing the effects is not the person acting and reading the lines. Mike, do you want to come back on any of that?
And basically, this is what I was trying to do with the notes. The FX thing is not for the audience. The FX thing is for the people who are doing the reading, so they can sort of get ready to act as if they're going to do that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't come through to the audience at all, and it shouldn't do.
Well, I think we've definitely missed that in the production, so I apologise on that. But
no, that's fine. Again, there is no there's no actual, even if you go through all of the sketches, there's no actual details on how to get that across to people without actually just dropping into the script somewhere.
It's a really fine detail of like craft, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will reiterate this point that the audience, although you were saying that the SFX description doesn't need to go to the audience, it needs to be aware of the audience and what they can hear. Now, I've got another note as well. For me, listening to it, which really helped, that the sequence at the end with the dinosaur eating people, that's the peak of the sketch. And that's what I would say where the sketch ends. Narratively, it's a big event, boom. So why does it continue after that point? There's no extra jokes. There's no reflection on what's gone on before, particularly. So I don't understand why you did stop there with the biggest comedy moment, as in people being eaten by dinosaurs.
It was more on the parody line because as I've been made plainly aware now, there's too many jokes going on because I'm trying to finish off the television show Dinosaur's Den with the coda after I've done the last joke, which is sort of like, well,
but why do you need that?
Yeah, why am I doing both?
But also, why do you need to finish off a TV show parody? It's like, okay, I'm doing a parody of a show. It's still a sketch with a sketch format. It's just parodying a particular thing. You don't need to see the end credits of that parody of that show. You don't need to see the opening titles. We understand we've come in the middle of a episode of this show, and we're just saying a little snippet of it. Within that snippet, you've got your traditional format of setup and conflict and resolution. You don't have to make that the whole of the episode of the show, if you see what I mean. Of course, and knowing this is meant to be a satire, then perhaps including a caveman version of the theme tune might have been an option.
I wanted to do that, but I listened to the theme tune and went, no one is going to be able to do that. That will be an absolute nightmare for Luke or anyone.
Yeah.
No, I would include it, and then at least we understand that that's what's going on, and then it's up to us to solve that problem.
Let's get into that. I think it's in the first draft, Mike. I think that it is the Dragon's Den theme tune. Don't know if anybody's got it.
Oh, yes, it was. Yes, yeah, because that was one of my first cuts, because I went, that's ridiculous.
Well, I
How
think
did I ever think of that?
I've got two thoughts on this. Firstly, I think it's fine to give that to the BBC because the BBC owns. Well, I don't know which studio produces Dragon's Den, but at least the BBC broadcasts.
Yeah, they don't make
it. You have still given the production team a job to do because they need to produce a parody theme tune. So that's another thing that maybe helps yours towards the reject pile.
That's true.
And then when it comes to me, I'm not the BBC. So is there, and this, Mike, might have been something we discussed, was the overhead for me to then produce, and by me, I mean the reject pile, whatever it is, whatever broadcast it is that you're giving this other sketch to, not only do they have to produce this parody of the theme tune, they then are, need to deal with copyright as well. And then, so your notes were, well, just some generic skull music. And that it's given me another job to do. It's a little bit fun, but still, it's just that little bit of extra work that the production team has to do to kind of hopefully produce what is as close to what you had in mind, which is what I aim for today. It just had some of those extra hurdles.
Yeah,
I'm just going to add in there, if you're going to include something that's difficult to do, make sure it's bloody funny. If it's worth the effort, they will do it. So I do think that if you're doing a parody of Dragon's Den as cavemen, it does make sense to introduce the concept straight away with a caveman version of the theme tune. And it can be as simple as them just singing it in, or something like that. So I mean, that would be a solution that the producer would have to come up with. But it immediately helps set up the world in which we are in, so the audience get it, and we've got that clarity. Listening to the sketch, it's although we talk about Dinosaur's Den, and we don't see the parody element particularly until Duncan Bannatyne turns up several lines in, And ideally, we should be already on that page, so we're expecting him. And I would probably put Duncan Bannatyne's character straight away
Yeah, I think so.
to re-emphasise the fact that, oh yes, we're doing a parody of that, are we?
To be fair to Mike, that was there in the first draft.
Yeah.
You know, straight up front with the theme tune.
Mm.
So
it's
what I'm
just,
saying
you
is
know,
cutting it was a mistake.
yeah.
And I think if you're going to do a parody, go full in. Whenever you do any of this stuff, pick a lane and go, I'm going to do a parody of this. So that means we do a caveman version of the theme tune. We do a caveman version of the characters, and we really go full in to do it. When you start compromising and going, oh, maybe it's going to be difficult for me to do that, then I think that's where you start to lose your strength and the faith you've got in your idea. And you've got to have confidence and faith in your idea. And the more confidence you have in your idea and the more it shows on the page, the more the readers will go, you know what? Or the producers will go, you know what? It's worth doing this because it's hilarious. And they will find a way to do it within the budget that they've got. It doesn't mean they've got to do it, you know, expensively. There are ways around it. There is free music on the internet. There are versions. There are ways of doing these things that are very cheap, and just getting the actors to hum it. You know, there are. So you don't have to. Don't be worrying about budget
as well.
Yeah,
if a lo-fi rendition is probably funny as well. But anyway,
exactly.
I think it's time to wrap up. So hopefully you've enjoyed, you know, the experience of mulling over the first draft, the notes, and then the latest recording of the latest version.
It was really, really useful. I think, one of the things, it's just so difficult to get notes back to start with because you don't know what's gone wrong, and your really bad piece, which will never be rescued, and your really good piece, which just needs a little tweak, can look exactly the same.
And you can't, without that extra insight, you don't know. Absolutely. Well, so, Mike, thanks so much for sending it in and joining us on Reject Pile. Do you want to just take a moment to tell the listeners where they can find out more about you and the work that you're doing?
I am doing a whole set of work in loads of different places. I'm writing for Breaking the News at the moment. I have a website. If you go to a tiny URL, it's not really. That will get you through to my website, which will say everything I'm working on at the moment.
Okay.
Good
It's
stuff.
likely to change as jobs come in.
And what about you, Phil? Anything you'd like to plug?
Gosh, I'm currently up to my elbows in working in the TV, so I would strongly recommend seeing the second series of Things You Should Have Done, which will be out later this year. I'm involved in the production of that, I think is the simplest way. I'm really hoping that the bit that I wrote is included in the edit, but I won't know. But it's a good show. I should also mention We Might Regret This, which I'm currently working on as well, series 2. I've got a bunch of short films that are currently in post that I will be releasing. So if anybody goes to Exciting Stories, that's Exciting Story and then a Z at the end of it. That's on all social media. So Exciting Stories are on all the socials.
So that's spelled STORYZ.
Exactly. What about you?
More Reject Pile episodes coming. We've got more sketches. We've got a sitcom, which we're really looking forward to featuring. And of course, that set me up nicely, Phil, to put the call out for more submissions. So listeners, if you've got any rejected material, we're open to comedy, drama, whatever. Please send it through. You can reach us on rejectpilepod@gmail.com and follow us on various socials at rejectpilepod. So that's all we have time for. Thanks again, Mike, for the submission, and you for listening. Please do help us to spread the word by rating, reviewing, and passing it on to anyone you think might like it. And do get in touch with any correspondence you'd like us to read out, any feedback, and of course, your own rejected material. This has been The Reject Pile. I've been Luke Edwards. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Can't move. Dinosaur? Rock not try. Rock try. Rock me.
Oh no, that's my bad. What? Oh, that's annoying. What's going on here?
Rock! Move! Dinosaur!
Yamin!
That asked a lot of you.
Oh yeah, it did, didn't it? Yeah. My versatile caveman finally came in handy. My mum always said I look like a Neanderthal, so I finally live in it. It's all led up to this moment.